The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. I'm Michelle Hebert, Director of Communications here at SAANYS, and welcome to another Lunch and Learn in our ongoing Financial Friday series. SAANYS is excited to offer these sessions in cooperation with our corporate partner, AXA. AXA has a long-standing presence in New York, and a large portion of AXA's New York client base is built upon the work they do within the public education system. Through AXA, SAANYS members can receive competitive insurance rates and a full array of retirement services, including a complimentary financial profile for SAANYS members, which we urge you to take advantage of. This is a great benefit for SAANYS members. Our AXA presenter today is Greg Pogorski, a Vice President and Advisor here in the Capital District area. Before we get started, please note that participants are muted during the session, but we will have some Q&A time following the presentation. So what I'd like you to do is just to type those questions into your control panel that you'll see on the right, and we'll get to those questions following the presentation. We're recording the session, and we'll soon post it at SAANYS.org, and after the session, I'll email all registrants with a link to that recording, so you will have it in archive form following this session. So with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Greg.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you everyone for being on and taking time out of your busy days. Hopefully everybody had a great holiday season and Happy New Year. What we're going to be talking about today is really in regards to one of the biggest income sources that everybody will have, and that's really going to be your teacher's retirement system pension. There's a lot of years of service collectively on this call and a lot of future benefit that everyone's entitled to. So again, one of the big things that we look at for our clients are ways to maximize those benefits over time and make sure that that income that is expected to be there from the family standpoint is there for both sides of the financial household, both the TRS employee and any spouses that may be in the picture. So again, there's a lot of planning that goes into not just the pension, but when we look at the overall retirement picture, there's a lot of uncertainties. And unfortunately, we have to make some assumptions around those uncertainties, but we don't necessarily know what's going to happen with Social Security, healthcare, what's going to happen with investment returns. And we have to look at a lot of these things that are variables out there and try and control as much as we possibly can. And that's really where the planning portion of what we do on a day-to-day basis comes into play, because we want to make sure that when we're not just looking at every individual account or every individual income source that our clients have in a silo, we really want to make sure that we're making comprehensive and collective decisions around these different income sources. So the Social Security benefits we're all entitled to will coincide with the pension options that you're eligible for, which will coincide with 403Bs and Roth IRAs and personal savings. And that could just be on one side of the financial household. There's also the other side where again, if spouses are in the picture, we want to look at how all of these different moving parts are really working together. So that's, again, we're going to take a look specifically on the pension side today, but there's a lot of overlap between how those individual decisions around the pension might also influence decisions to make around things like Social Security and distribution needs from other retirement accounts. So on the agenda today, again, we're going to go through a quick pension overview, and there's going to be, my disclaimer will be, there's a lot of information that we're going to cover in a fairly short amount of time. So if there are any specific questions or any very individual questions afterwards, I'll put up a contact list for all of my colleagues across New York State. So if there is a need for any individual conversations, again, you'll have the ability to do that. But then again, there's decisions to make in preparing for retirement. There's points to consider, and then we'll talk about some alternative strategies as well. But just to go through an overview of the New York State pension system, there's 3 pension factors that TRS looks at in calculating the eligible pension income for the rest of your life. The first one is the age at retirement. And we're really going to be talking primarily about Tier 4 members today. If you are a Tier 3 New York State employee, you're able to retire under the better of the Tier 3 or Tier 4 benefits. But again, we're not going to get too much into tier 5 and 6 because those individuals are a couple more years away from retirement. So again, those 3 pension factors. The first is the age at retirement. There's 2 big criteria here. The first being age 55 with 30 years of service. Hitting those 2 requirements allows somebody to retire without any penalty for collecting their pension benefits earlier than age 62. All right, so if somebody hits their 30th year of service when they're 58 years old, again, they can retire without any penalty from the New York State pension system. But if somebody hits age 61 and has 29 years, there's some penalties that are involved in collecting that pension benefit. All right, the other caveat to that is as long as someone with less than 30 years of service hits age 62, they don't receive a reduction in what their lifetime pension income will be. All right, so again, 55 years old with at least 30 years of service, or age 62 with less than 30 years. The second pension factor is the total years of service, and that goes into a calculation that, again, per year of service, you get an eligible percentage of your income, and then your total income or your pension, the third pension factor there, is calculated based on your final average salary, which is the highest 3 consecutive earning years. For most people, that's the last 3 years of working, but there have been plenty of instances where somebody takes a pay reduction in their last couple of years. So New York State will actually calculate your 3 highest consecutive earning years to calculate the pension benefit. As far as the New York State Teachers Retirement System goes, it continues to be year after year one of the best funded pension programs in the United States. There's a lot of conversation, there's a lot of media talk about some of the unfunded or underfunded pension systems across the country. Again, the New York State Employees Retirement System and the Teachers Retirement System continues to be one of the best funded. Really, the way that we view it as financial advisors is that the pension benefits that you're eligible for through TRS are really a portion of guaranteed lifetime income. All right, and again, you know, it's guaranteed is in quotations there because some things can change, but again, for all intents and purposes, it is something that should be there for the rest of each of your lives. And again, that's what makes the decision-making process so critical to maximize those benefits that you're entitled to. Another key component is that the pension is typically the largest source of retirement income for TRS members who maximize their benefits, and again, who retire under those 2 age restrictions. So again, hitting those 30 years of service is a big milestone. If we're not going to hit the 30 years before retirement, then we want to have a sense that we're going to work until 62. Again, so there's no reduction in what we can expect, right? And for anyone who listens to the news, you know, the last couple of months or follows the stock market for the last couple of months, there's been a lot of uncertainty and a lot of unpredictability, which have been driving the stock market downward. And one of the biggest other benefits to the teacher's retirement system pension is that because it's a guaranteed lifetime income source, it provides a lot of consistency, stability, and peace of mind, where you're not necessarily relying on the stock market to perform in a way that we hope it does for your lifetime income or for your monthly retirement income. So again, those are a few of the caveats there. As great as the New York State pension is, there are some challenges. One of the challenges is that it's inflexible after 30 days of retirement. So if somebody retires at the end of a school year on July 1st, they have until July 31st of that same month to make any changes to the pension option they elected. Once August 1st comes, nothing can be changed. We can't go back and take a different pension option. We can never change beneficiaries, regardless of any personal needs or income needs, family or marital changes, anything like that. Unfortunately, you can never make any other changes to that pension election. So again, one of the reasons why the planning process is so imperative to making the right selection there. There's also very low cost of living increases. Generally, those cost of living increases don't begin until someone's 5 or 10 years into retirement. And then once they do, it's a minimum of $15 a month increase, a maximum of $45 a month. So again, it's not a very big increase in it. In the pension benefit doesn't necessarily keep up with inflation or the cost of goods over time. Something that's not widely known by a lot of New York State TRS members is that if somebody passes away before actually retiring, there is no pension benefit. So somebody could have 30 years of service and be age 57, pass away while they're still working, and their spouse would not be entitled to any pension from New York State. All right, there is an in-service death benefit, but it's only a fraction of what the lifetime income would really recreate. All right, so again, part of the planning process is making sure that we're protecting those pension benefits to the extent that we need to make sure, God forbid, something were to happen, that a spouse isn't left in financial ruin close to retirement because they were relying on that pension income. And again, going back to the age requirements, so if somebody does retire at age 55 with 29 years of service, they're going to get a 27% reduction in what their annual pension income is for the rest of their life. All right, and again, there's a sliding scale there. So the closer someone gets to 62, there's less of a reduction, but again, it's still a permanent reduction. So some of those things that we want to look at and make sure that we're maximizing what you're entitled to through New York State. All right. As far as the teachers' retirement system pension options, this is where we see a lot of our clients and a lot of the administrators that we work with start to get some confusion around what these different benefit options mean. So we'll go through that quickly here. In the single life pension option, ultimately means that that's the amount that you're able to collect for the rest of your life. If something were to happen to you, that pension benefit would stop. All right. And then there's also survivor options. All right. And we'll again go through what each of those are and some of the pros and cons of all of those. So with the single life pension, it's the highest eligible amount that you're entitled to. All right. And that income, again, will continue for as long as you live. However, in the case of family planning and planning for both sides of the household, one of the biggest variables is what happens if what do we do if something happens early to that New York State employee? All right. And in that case of the single life pension, once that New York State employee passes away, the spouse, if they're still living, is not entitled to any pension benefit from New York State. All right. So ultimately, that pension goes with you. All right. Again, not something that we all want to necessarily think about, but in the grand scheme of financial planning, excuse me, and retirement planning, we want to make sure that we're preparing for the worst, right? But also making sure that we're maximizing what you're entitled to over time. The joint allowance pension option. So this is where a spouse would receive a pension benefit if that SAANYS member were to pass away before them. All right. So it's a survivor option that continues the lifetime income as long as either the TRS member or the spouse is still alive. All right. The downside to the joint allowance option is that it's a smaller benefit and it's a reduction from the single life option that someone's entitled to. So for someone's entire retirement, they're going to be collecting a smaller benefit in order to make sure that that benefit will continue if something happens to either that TRS member or their spouse. All right. Again, that the biggest disadvantage with the joint allowance option is that regardless of who passes away first, the reduced pension continues until the second passing, and after the second passing, that New York State pension would completely stop. All right. The option that we generally compare the selection to the most is referred to as the pop-up option. And this works a little bit differently than the joint allowance. So it's also a survivor benefit where a spouse would be eligible to receive a portion of the pension if that TRS member passes away before them. All right. But the disadvantage there is that, again, while someone's living or while both parties are living, there's a smaller benefit than the eligible single life option. All right. If the TRS employee passes away, the spouse would continue to receive that pension benefit. And the amount of that pension benefit would be determined by the selected option at retirement. All right, and again, I'll flash back to that last chart that we showed, showing those different benefits. But the caveat to the pop-up option is that if the spouse of the TRS member passes away, the TRS member pops up back to their full single life pension value. All right, so there's a slight boost in the pension income from choosing that pop-up option, again, if the spouse of that TRS member passes away first. The reason that we generally look at this as the most likely comparison is because, again, when we look at the big picture of retirement planning and all the different income sources that someone may be entitled to, we look at Social Security in conjunction with New York State pension benefits. And the way that Social Security death benefits work, if both a husband and a wife are collecting a Social Security benefit and one of the two pass away, the surviving spouse will continue to receive the higher of the two Social Security incomes. All right. However, one of the lower of the two Social Security incomes are going to go away. So there's going to be a reduction in Social Security income if there's a passing of one spouse. The pop-up option, what that allows is by increasing the pension income, if that spouse passes away, the TRS member is able to supplement and offset some of the eliminated Social Security by getting a higher monthly benefit from the teacher's retirement system. All right. So again, that's part of the big picture, kind of full, comprehensive, holistic planning that we do to make sure that if everything goes according to plan and we have two spouses in the household that live long into retirement, again, that we're maximizing what that retirement income could be. But again, if something were to happen to one side of the household, that the other side, the surviving spouse, is not left in a financially challenging situation in retirement. So again, going back to all of those options there, that single life option for a 60-year-old TRS employee with 30 years of service who has a spouse who's age 56 and has a final average salary of $100,000, they would be entitled to a single life pension of about $60,000. All right. The joint allowance option to continue for the rest of both of their lives would be a reduction of almost $7,000 from what they're entitled to in order to make sure that their spouse was protected. The different options under the joint allowance are if we didn't want to give up as much from the single life, the 75%, the half, or the 25% are other available options where we don't give up as much as long as we're both alive. But if something happens to that TRS member, then the spouse would get a fraction of what they were collecting together. All right. The pop-up option, which you can see below that, we give up a little bit more for the flexibility to potentially increase back to that single life amount at some point down the road, again, if a spouse of that TRS member passes away. All right, but with that pop-up benefit, that amount, so on the full amount, the spouse would continue to receive $52,000 a year if something were to happen to that TRS member. With the 75%, the half, and the 25%, they would receive that percentage of that joint income while that TRS member was alive. So some of the points to consider, and I'll show you an illustration here of what that would look like. So we have Carl and Catherine. Carl is the New York State employee, the TRS member, who was eligible for a $5,000 single life option with no survivor benefit. All right, and just to give an alternative here, if we looked at a 50% survivorship benefit, Carl, while both Carl and Catherine are living, Carl and Catherine would receive $4,400 a month. If something happens to Carl, Catherine would continue to receive $2,200 a month with the 50% survivorship option, and that's what she would receive for the rest of her life. All right. So again, with the single life option, the TRS member passes away, nothing goes to the survivor. With the survivorship option, the TRS member passes away, and $2,200 a month still comes from New York State to the surviving spouse, or Catherine in this case, and that's still taxable at ordinary income for the spouse's life. All right, so there's no change in the tax ramifications or anything there. The New York State pension is federally taxed. It's not taxed as long as you live in New York State or a state that does not have state income tax. All right, but if you do move to a state outside of New York that does have a state income tax, the New York State pension will most likely become a taxable income source on the state level as well as the federal. All right, so to throw another scenario out there, one of the big things that we also look at is looking at supplementing the pension options with individually owned life insurance. All right, and this can work in certain circumstances. It doesn't necessarily work universally across the board, but the other option that we look at a lot of times, where if we have a SAANYS member or TRS member who's in good health, instead of giving up that percentage of the monthly income to New York State in order to provide a lifetime income to the spouse, we can potentially supplement that with individual life insurance. The way that that works is that, let's say that we have Carl, in this case, eligible to collect his $5,000 a month pension while he's still alive. All right, so that single life pension benefit, that maximum pension benefit, comes in while both sides of the household are still alive. If something were to happen to Carl, in this case, as the TRS employee who passes away, the spouse would not get anything from New York State, but because Carl had an individual life insurance policy, there's a lump sum tax-free death benefit that is eligible to go to the spouse or surviving children. All right. The proceeds from that death benefit can be set up in a way that it produces the same income that they would have gotten from, that the spouse would have gotten from New York State, in order to supplement what those retirement income needs are. All right. The other side of it is, if Carl outlives Catherine and Catherine passes away first, Carl has the flexibility with individual life insurance to change the beneficiaries. He can reduce or eliminate the life insurance if he would like to. All right. In cashing it or in surrendering or reducing the life insurance, he may be eligible to receive cash value that's tied to that. And he can also reduce or eliminate the premiums that are involved with that life insurance plan. All right, so again, I'll reiterate, as great as the New York State pension system is, and as much as the stable income as it provides, as great as that is, the downsides are the inflexibility and losing some of the choice and control over some of those life changes that can happen over time. All right, again, if the individual life insurance makes sense as an alternative to some of the joint allowance or pop-up options that New York State offers, we can retain that choice and flexibility while collecting the single life, the highest income pension benefit that everyone's entitled to. So again, we can change beneficiaries, we can reduce or eliminate the life insurance premiums, where we're right back at that single life option that just like the pop-up option that we would have done with New York State. Or in addition to that, we could potentially surrender the life insurance. And if there's cash value tied to that policy, we're eligible to receive that cash value as a supplement to owning that individual life insurance. All right. So again, the advantages of the pension maximization are kind of listed here, but there is a long-term planning process that determines if this is one, something that's viable, and two, something that's advantageous. All right. So there is a lot that goes into the calculation to the determination to see if this is something that may make sense for that TRS member, their spouse, and their family. But again, the proper planning goes into that, and it's not necessarily something that can be done at retirement. It's something that really needs to be looked at and explored potentially years from retirement. All right. So there are different ways to look at this, but again, the closer we get to retirement, the more challenging making these decisions becomes, because we may not have had the ability to plan for some of the nuances there. All right, so to determine if pension maximization is right, or again, looking at those survivor options makes more sense, there are some of those factors include the financial situation that we're in. Again, where are income sources coming from in retirement? What do we need to protect? The health of the individuals that we're looking to ensure, what the objectives are, and options that we may have under our employer's retirement plan. So again, New York State, the New York State pension system lays those options out in pretty much black and white. But again, there's a lot of calculation and there's a lot of analysis that has to go into that to determine what makes the most appropriate determination to select which pension option, again, depending on some of these factors. All right. So one of the challenges in again, we do a lot of presentations and workshops like this around New York State for a lot of the SAANYS members, for a lot of the TRS members that we work with. But one of the challenges out there is that the New York State TRS recommendation, they lay out a countdown to retirement. And if anyone has the TRS handbook, the guide to retirement that they use, this is really what they lay out. And they recommend that 18 months away from retirement, somebody should ask for a retirement estimate, which we agree with. Again, it's good to know exactly where those numbers fall. But 12 months from retirement, we should educate ourselves about the pre-retirement issues that we will need to consider. 8 months from retirement, we need to review our other retirement income, again, Social Security, IRAs, 403Bs, anything along those lines. 6 months from retirement, we should review our retirement budget. 4 months, we should review our health insurance coverage. And then, again, we view that as you could almost change some of those monthly recommendations that they make to years ahead of retirement, right? So almost 12 years ahead, we should start looking at some of the retirement issues to, again, make sure that we're doing everything we need to today to make any changes to get us to where we need to be down the road. 8 years from retirement, we should start to review our other income sources. Again, look at Social Security expectations. Look at how much we can expect to take from IRAs or retirement accounts or 403Bs every single month. 6 years, we should start to review that retirement budget. We have a lot of clients who ultimately retire at the same time that kids might be getting done with school, that kids are becoming more financially independent, maybe moving out of the household. There's a lot of times things that are changing and evolving in our lives, or at least expectations that when we retire, this is what we're not going to have on the table that we have today. Again, that could be debt, it could be mortgages, could be personal loans, could be home equity lines of credit, anything along those lines. But again, our thought process is to get all of these things on the table years ahead of time to start laying the groundwork for preparing or for being able to retire the way that we want to. And again, all of those different things over time are going to lead into some of the decisions centered around what pension option do I take? When do I start collecting Social Security? When does my spouse start collecting Social Security? How much do we take out of our retirement accounts? Which accounts do we take out of first? All of those different types of scenarios. So again, there's a lot that goes into it, but the longer that we have to plan, the more prepared that we can be. All right. So again, we want to make sure all of our SAANYS members have an expectation, have a reasonable expectation for what they can expect down the road. And again, the earlier that we start planning for that, the better off, the better prepared we can be. All right. So in closing, here's a snapshot of all the SAANYS regions and local contact information for, again, my colleagues across New York State. So personally, I cover the capital region here in Albany and more of the North Country down into Poughkeepsie and in parts going towards Westchester. But anybody who's located across New York State, there are local advisors who are able to have individual conversations with all of you. All right, so we definitely appreciate the support and everything that you do for SAANYS. We appreciate everything that you do for your school districts and the local communities. And again, we definitely look forward to working with you, and we're more than happy to answer any questions on an individual basis, and we can do that locally. All right, so Michelle, with that, I guess we can open it up for questions.
Yep, we do have a few. The first is, does all of this apply to those of us in the ERS as well?
Yes, so the TRS and ERS, the pension benefits really work in conjunction with one another. So the same stipulations as TRS would be the same for any ERS employees.
Okay, and we did do that webinar specifically for ERS employees previously last year, and that is archived on SAANYS.org. So you'll find that there along where this is going to be archived if you want to reference that. The next question is, if you are unexpectedly retiring, can you still consider the life insurance option without having the lead time?
Yes, we can still consider it because there's a process that goes through underwriting or that goes with life insurance called underwriting. It does take some time to figure out if that's a viable solution, depending on what the time frame is. Again, we can absolutely look at options there, and again, we're more than happy to do that on a local basis to see if it is something where the life insurance option would be viable based on when someone's retirement date will be.
Okay, and a follow-up question to that is, what is the process for meeting with an AXA advisor about these options? Is there a cost?
No, great question, actually. So there is no cost. So one of the primary reasons that that we're able to partner with SAANYS is because we are a no cost financial planning organization, especially for our SAANYS members. There's never a cost to sit down and review where you are, where you want to be down the road. There's never an invoice or a bill that somebody will get for sitting down and taking a look at those things. There's no cost for going through the underwriting process to determine if life insurance is something that should be considered, for reviewing pension options. No, there's no cost for our planning services.
Okay, the next question. Would you suggest taking from a Roth IRA or an IRA first?
That would depend. That's probably more of an individual conversation to determine financially and from a tax standpoint what makes more sense for the household, where assets fall from a taxable and a tax-free standpoint. So it's challenging to say, but again, generally, I would say pre-tax can make more sense initially, because eventually with required distributions, we'll have to start taking from those anyway, where Roth IRAs don't have any required minimum distributions once 70 and a half hits. So again, very individual, but broad-based, I can say usually 3 out of 5 times it might make more sense to take pre-tax assets first.
Okay, and here's a longer question. If you leave public service after 20 years, but before you reach 62, can you leave public service and go into private employment without taking your retirement benefits until you reach age 62, and then tap into full retirement without an age-related reduction?
Generally, yes. Generally, yes, you can delay collecting your pension benefits if you're no longer working for a New York State entity. It's uncommon to see, but yes, usually that is a possible solution to not collecting it with a lifetime reduction in the total pension that you're eligible for. So generally, yes, but again, that might be specific to the district that somebody might be retiring from, or the employer, the New York State employer who they might be retiring from.
Okay. Here's another one. If you leave public service, oh, we already went to that one. So the next question is, what is your contact information? It's too small to read on the screen. So preferred phone number there. The text is a little small for some.
Got it. What I can do, Michelle, I can email this to you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and if we want to post this on the website, we can do that as well.
Yeah. And just for quick reference, I'll read it to you. Greg's phone number is listed here: 518-373-7335. It is small.
So yes, yep, and that's my direct office line. But we'll send out the presentation with all the contact information. So if someone is in a different area, then they can reach out to their local advisor as well.
Certainly. Okay. Any more questions? All right. I think that's it, Greg. Thank you very much, and thanks everybody. Have a great weekend, and be sure to join us next month for the Financial Friday webinar on the basics of taxes. So till then, bye-bye.
Yes, thank you, Michelle.